So hey everyone, welcome to another React video. In this video we are going to create a search bar with auto suggestions. So what happens is when you enter an input query, it tries to match the input query with the data available, and then it gives you some matching options as a drop down. As you can see, based on our letter D, we are getting tons of suggestions here, which are character names matching from the data. The data is of character names from the series Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. So as you can see, we have two characters DA, and let's add another R, and then we get only two. We'll select Darth Vader, and there is also search toggle which opens the search on a Google search engine, but that's not the main part. The main part is how to implement the auto suggestion, which we are going to do in React.js. So let's start this video. So let's open our terminal and we will type npm create vite@latest to install React via Vite. We'll name the project search and we'll select React and basic JavaScript. We will select our folder here and we will install all the npm packages, which will take a little bit of time.
A few moments later.
Okay, once done, we can directly open it in our VS Code using code space dot command, and it should open in our VS Code. And as you can see the folder structure here, and one thing we don't need is the pre-made styles here, I mean pre-built styles. We will remove that. We will also remove the index.css file completely, and we will also have to remove it from the main file. Here we will just remove the import. Here also the assets, we don't need that, and done. Okay, it is taking a little bit time. And then let's move to app.jsx. we will just cut all of this and let's import the CSS file. Let's create a new function. We will export default this function and let's rename it app, which was before, we deleted that. We will return a text for testing it. So let's return h1 Jotaro and let's run it in the terminal using npm run dev, and it will give us a URL. We will open this and it should open in our Firefox. And there we have it. Okay, so now let's create a file for our data. We'll name it LOTR because of Lord of the Rings and JSX. We'll copy paste it. You can copy this from my GitHub. The link is in the description. And as you can see, the object name is LOTR characters, and the object has ID for each item and a name, and it goes till 200. By the way, we have two separate names here, one for Lord of the Rings and one for Star Wars. So Star Wars is from I think 100. And let's go in the app.jsx and let's import it. And we will set from, it is in the same source directory, and done. We'll also import useState. Because we will need it here. Okay, we will also need to import some files. Let's create those folders here first, I mean files. So let's create the search drop down component first. And we will set the function we will use the arrow function here. Let's give a space and let's export it as default. Okay, done. And we will also create another file for the button you saw beside the input, and that should be Google search button. Yeah, I don't think I have thought a very good name, but anyway, we will also set this as an arrow function. Let's remove it. And yeah, we'll also set this as an arrow function. Let's give the arrow and let's export it as default, similar to the previous component. And then both of our components are ready, so we'll import it in our app folder. You just have to type a little bit of name and VS Code does the job. Okay, let's give some space here and we'll set the state first. Let's name the variable value and the function set value. We will set the use state and we will keep it empty. Let's create a function to handle the state. We'll name this handle change. We'll define it as an arrow function. We'll give it an argument val and the new value will be given via the val argument. Okay, then let's remove this h1 and instead we'll define the app here. Let's give a class name app and this is our first component, and beside that will be our second component, which is the Google search button. And for the first component we will give it some props. Let's give it the state as a prop, which will be selected val, and it will refer to our value prop. And the next will be the function handle change, and we will keep it the same name. And let's give data props, which will be our LOTR JSX data file, which will be from the LOTR JSX data file. We will give the name and ID and also the whole object. So let's give first our whole object, and then the name will keep the same name as the prop name, and for ID also we will keep the same name as prop name. Let's format the document. Okay, then let's start with our drop down component first, and we'll first import the use state hook. Done. And let's pass the props. Options, name, selected, val, and the change function, and last one was ID. Okay, so this we are passing as an object, and let's return we'll create 3 divs here. The first one will be drop down, and the second one, let's name it control, and the third one selected value. Okay, let's make it kebab case. Okay, so now we are going to add the input field. Let's add a placeholder. LOTR and Star Wars characters. Okay, let's see, and you can see it's working. It's written LOTR and Star Wars character, and also the input field. So we will now give the input field some value. For that we will have to create a function, and the function is to display the input field when we type on it. You might be thinking that it's already displaying, but it won't if we add some more functions, so that's why we need this. And it is also to check some other stuffs like the query, which we will have to make the state after this. So let's first declare the function. After that we will declare the state of query. So let's go here at the top and let's set the state for the input field, and we can change the query using set query, and let's set the initial state to empty, and the display value, if the user has typed, then display the query. That's how it's gonna work. So if query isn't null, then return the query. And now for options also we have to create a function, but for now in the display value, if the selected value is true, then return selected value, and else return empty string. Okay, done. We will now add this display value here, and it should work. Okay, so there is a bug here, we need to check this out. Let's see for errors. Okay, so the use state, we have defined the state in a wrong way. So the state should be, yes, the state should be inside the function. We have declared it outside the function. Okay, now let's see. Okay, the input field is showing up again. So let's add an onChange function here. So the onChange function will take the input event as an argument, and it will set the query to the value of the event using event.target.value. So the event is a DOM element obviously, and the handle change function will be called from app.js, which is passed as a prop, and we will set the handle change function to null. So whenever a user types, the query is set to the new value and the previous value is removed. So let's add a comment, update query when user types. Let's add a space and done. We will also console log this here, so that if there is any bug, we can initially see it in our console, and later we can go and fix a bug when we add other function like the options. So let's see, we'll go in inspect. Here we will remove this error tab and just type anything, and you can see it's working. It is getting the latest value and is setting it as the new state of the query. So now let's remove this console for now. Okay, so now let's create a div for our options, and in this div we will give a conditional class name so that we can later style it according to that. And the initial will be options, and then I think we will need to create a state for this. We will create a state whether the option should be open or not, and let the variable name is open and the function set is open, and we will initialize the state with a false boolean value. Okay, then done. And now we can use this in our conditional class name. So if it is open, then the name would be open along with options, and if it is false, which it is, then it should be empty. So it will only consider the options as the class name. And now let's use a filter function, which we yet have to declare, but we can just use it for now. We will pass two arguments, which is options, and it will filter what are the options. I mean, the options are basically our data. Here you can see it is the data set of characters. The whole object is passed as a prop via options. So here we will check for the input query, and we will filter the options via query. We will create the function later on, you can understand. So let's first add some comments here, so it will be easier to understand when I push this code to my GitHub repo. So it will filter by query and map over that array. So it gives single option and its index, and will return a div. So it will be a set of divs which it will provide. So here we will write, we will use a arrow function here, and we will take argument option and index. We have to yet create the filter function, so it might be difficult for you to understand for now, but it's going to all match when we are going to create the function. So we are passing argument option and the index, and we are going to return a div. And inside the div it will be the option and the options name, because in the object it's the name which has the characters. So we are using the filter function, and let's create the filter function now. We will add some comments so that all the functions are easy to distinguish. That is our display function above and the filter function below that, and we will create another function later on. So we will use the arrow function again, and we will use the current query as the for passing the query and options in the argument. Okay, so as you can see, we are using these arguments again similar to here in this function. So everything works. It takes two arguments, options and query. Don't show results if the query is empty. So if query is empty, then return empty array, and here we will return filtered options. Now here we will again define an arrow function, and we will take option as an argument and access the option name. Will turn the string into lowercase to lowercase, which is a string method. We will also check the index of using the index of method, so it will check the index of the query, and we will also turn the query into lowercase, so there should not be any error. And if it's more than -1 means it exists, so it will show the option. We'll add the comments for you to understand. It's not in the options. Yeah. We'll cut this and paste it right beside here, and we'll add another comment. It will describe the code. So if it checks if the lowercase name of an option contains the lowercase query. Okay, done. So let's see, and as you can see, the options are showing but the input is not showing. I think the error is somewhere in the display. Let's see. Okay, it's still not showing. Okay, let's go and let's see if we made some error in the display. No, the display function is correct. It checks if the query is null, and here we are using the display. We have to put a parenthesis so that the function gets executed, and now it should work, and you can see it's working. We will type again, and you can see it's working. It's showing the input, and here you can see now we have to add a function to select the options. So we'll create a new function here. We will first add some comments to separate this. Okay, so option selection, let's create the arrow function const select option, and so what it will do is it will set the query to item name, which is the property of the item object, and the item would be the data that will be sending through argument. So it will receive a argument item, and in the item it will access the name property. We will also update the handle change here. We will set it to item name, and also we will change the set is open state. So since it's the select option, so when you select an option, the set is open should be again close, so it should be false. so the drop down will close once you select the option. We will add some comments again. So here we will call handle change to update the value, and it closes the drop down. Okay, so let's move to a div, and here we will add an on click function. So it should register the click, and it should select the function. We are using an arrow function, so we are passing a function inside the on click, and we are passing the select option function. And if we refresh, let's see if we can select, and we will click on Darth Vader, and you can see it's working. We can select an option now. So now let's add some conditional class name in this div, and remember we are using backticks here, so don't use normal ticks, use backticks which are on the top left corner of your keyboard. The initial should be option, and then it the conditional should check if the option name property is equal to the selected value, and if it is, then it should, the name class name should be selected, and if it's not, then it should be empty. Conditional class name, and here it show the option, and here you can select the option. Okay, so now we need to add our fourth function here, which should toggle the drop down, I mean close the drop down on interaction outside the drop down. So if you click outside, then it should toggle down the drop down. So we are going to use effect hook for this. So the use effect will check for clicks we are going to use a event listener here. So it is going to be document add event listener. We are later also going to remove this. So in the event listener, it will first check for a click, and it will implement a toggle function which we will have to create. So let's remove this, because in the use effect we have to provide a cleanup function. So we are going to provide a arrow function, and that arrow function is going to remove our event listener later on once the execution is done. And it will again check for click and the toggle function. Let's add some comments for you to understand better when you if you copy the source code from GitHub later on. Okay, done. And the dependency array is empty here. Now let's create a reference to the input. So whatever the input event is, it should have a reference. So we are going to use the ref hook here. Use ref, and it should automatically import it. The use ref is going to be null, and you can see it's have automatically imported it. And if it didn't, then you can add it there at the top on the import section. Here in the input we will reference the ref using ref is equals to the ref that we created, just input ref, and done. Okay, then so we'll need to create the toggle function. So let's create function toggle, and it will receive the click event as an argument. So we will enter E here, and what it will do is it will update this state of whether it is open or not. So we are going to use the set is open function, and the value of set is open is currently false, but it will depend upon whether E and E.target. So E is the event object here, and E.target is the HTML element. HTML element. We'll add this comment, and we will check if it is equal to the current input element. We are going to use the dot current property here, and let's add it in comment. Input ref is the current input value. We'll add another comment here. So if the E.target and input of current is matching, then it will obviously not close, and if they are not, then it will close the drop down. Okay, so here the ref is in the on change. It shouldn't be in the on change, but in the input the on change is a child function in it. So done here, and let's add a on click, and it will have the toggle function. So when input is clicked, toggle the drop down. So done, and now let's move to our Google search button. So we are going to pass the value as a prop here. We will go into app.jsx, and let's name this prop query. It is independent of the query in the drop down, so it's a different query prop, and we will pass it as an object. And let's add a comment first. We are going to define a URL here. So let's name the URL, which should be const Google search URL, and we will copy it from the browser. We will open a new tab and search Sauron. It's my favorite character in LOTR, and let's copy the URL at the top. We will edit it a little bit first, so just paste it here, and we don't need this client, and instead we will type a Q. Okay, now we are gonna create a function to handle the search. So let's name this handle search. It will be easy to understand. So if query is equals to true, then it will execute the function make the search URL. So the function is just making a search URL here. So let's name it search URL only, and we are going to use the backticks again, because we are going to access the previous variable, which is Google search URL, and we are going to access the encode URI component. So it encodes our URL with the query, and let's open it in a new window. So we are going to use window.open, and we are going to pass the search URL, and we are going to make the page open as a blank in a new window. So we are going to pass that string, and let's return a button. So on clicking the button, obviously it will work. We will add a on click here and pass the handle search function. For the icons, we will use the React icons extension that we have installed. You can just search React icons, and this one made by Afzal. you can just install it. I have already installed, or you can use icons from third-party sites also, like free icons, etc. Here I will search this search icon. Just type search and let's copy the first one. Okay, done. And now let's format this, and here we are finished with our component. And let's see, we will just refresh and remove this tab, and let's type Darth Vader, and we can select it, and then we can search it, and it's working. So the main part of our project is obviously the drop down, and the search button is just an additional component. As you can see, it's working with other characters too, obviously it should. So now let's style our components. We will move to app.css. First we will style the body, and we will set the background color. I already have a Figma design ready, so I will just use those styles. Okay, let's style the app, and we will add a font. Let's keep the font basic, we won't import any fonts here. Just keep it sans serif. Let the display be flex, and the justify content, let's align it in the center of the page. We are going to align it vertically too, so we will also use align item center. Okay, then we will add the margin, 4 viewport height from the sides and 4 viewport height from the top. Let's style the button, and let's set it height 60 pixel, and also the width should also be 60 pixel. And we will also change the cursor, so when you hover over the button, it should be pointers. And let's also increase the button size in the source. Here we will, instead of 1, we will do 2M, and done. And now let's move to our drop down. We will set the position relative, the color mild black, which is 333, and again the cursor pointer, and margin right should be 10 pixel, and done. The next thing we need to style is the selected value or div in the drop down. So you can see here. So let's first see, as you can see, our first div here is drop down, and the div where the input is our selected value div, so we have to select that, and then we can select input. So it will be drop down dot selected value and input. So there will be just space. Let's set the line height first. Let's set it 2.5, and the font size 3.2 rem or 1.2. The background color, it should be F3, F3, F3. The border should be 1 pixel solid, 78, 78, 78. And now the border radius, it should be 2 pixel. Again the cursor should be pointer, and there is always an outline in the input, so the outline should be none. So the default outline is removed, and the padding is 8 pixel and 20 pixel. For the width, it should be 50 viewport height, viewport width. The color, it should be RGB 29, 29, 29, 29 and 29. And At last, the transition, it should be for all the inputs and 20 ms, and it should be just is. So that's it for our selected value input. And if we just refresh it, and as you can see, it's popping up, and we need to fix a little bit more and add some more styles here. The next thing we are going to style is options, and you can see there is a conditional for option. There is a open class name, and it's in the drop down obviously, so we'll first select drop down, then options. Okay, so the initial display would be none because it pops up when the open is active, so the initial will be none. Let's set the background color F3 again. The border 1 pixel solid, and the color is CCC for the border. The max height of this will be around 210 pixel. The overflow Y will be auto. The Z index will be 1000, so nothing is above that, and the position is absolute, so it's at the without any relation to the div, and the width is 50.5 viewport width. And so let's refresh it, and you can see it's working, but since it's hidden, so it won't show up. I mean, the display is none, not hidden. So now let's set the for the open category when the state is open, and here the display should be block, and now it should show up yes. So it's depend upon the state whether it is open or not. And for the option, we need to style them too. We will set the box sizing border box, the display block, again the cursor pointer, and similar padding 8 pixel and 10 pixel, and finally the color, which should be completely black. Now let's see, and as you can see, the options are looking great. Now the last is the hover option. So when you hover on the options, the styles should change. For that, we will select the drop down option, selected value again, and we will select the option and hover over it. For hover, the background color will change to E2, and also the color, which will be again 333, and done. That's all for the styling. Our search bar styling is complete, and as you can see, it's working. We type D, there are tons of options provided here, and we can select any of that. If we type A, again the options are now less considering the amount of data. We can then search the input value using the search bar toggle, and it's completely working. So that's it from this video. I hope you find this video helpful, and if you did, then do hit the like button, and also subscribe the channel for upcoming videos on React.js projects. I will upload the source code of this project on my GitHub profile. You can check the repository. The link will be in the description. So see you in the next video.